Hello, everybody. This is the Old Bear from the Old Bear's Den of Bigfoot. I'm here today to bring you a story that was done this past Saturday night on my talk channel. Everybody knows what it is. Uh, I leave. Just wanted to let you guys know that been kind of busy dealing with issues for my dad and trying to have a little fun around Christmas time with the kids and the grandkids, and so I'm a little late getting this out, but it'll be out tonight. Anyway, this story comes right straight out of Alabama. This happened right in the Bankhead Forest in Alabama, off from Route 33 and near State Route 2. Uh, it happened on their first weekend of their firearm season for deer. This hunter called me and he seen the channel and called me and told me his story. So I hope y'all find it interesting. And here we go. Uh, this uh, this hunter had a special area he liked to go to on the first weekend of their firearm season for deer. He'd been in there 4 or 5 years in a row, never had trouble, never had anything happen. Always killed nice bucks out of there because the deer were funneled into there by other hunters. So, um, like I was saying, he waited till the first weekend of the buck season, because the pressure pushed all the deer into that area. He had been there quite a few years, going in there and killed some nice bucks on that. On the morning of the of his where his account starts, uh, that morning he he got to the area about an hour before daylight and cracked his windows and drank his coffee while he ate his wife's idea of a breakfast sandwich. From what I understand, this is a sandwich big enough for Paul Bunyan. Anyway, uh, let me tell you what the sandwich is made of. It's a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. It was put on a 12-inch bun, and he decided he was going to eat half the sandwich and then get his gun and load it up and take off and get in there early before daylight, so that way the deer, when they got to moving around from the other hunters coming in from the other direction, they'd be pushed right into him, and his day would end soon. Anyway, he got out of his truck after eating half the sandwich and pulled out his rifle and was loading his rifle, and he heard something really strange. He said he described it as a woman's scream and a bear roar. Now, he has been to other states to bear hunt and has heard a few bear roars. He's been to Canada. He's been up into uh, Minnesota, Michigan, places where they have bear seasons. He's heard them roar. Anyways, that was what he described it as. The scream bothered him a bit, but he was armed and was on a mission to get a certain deer that he'd been seeing in that area that seemed like it stayed in there. So he really didn't, he just kind of disregarded it for a moment and said, you know what, I don't really need to get into that early. I'll just, because the scream come from the area that he was going to go hunting in. So he decided he was just going to, hang around the truck, drink some more coffee, and try to finish up that Paul Bunyan breakfast sandwich his wife made. Uh, he decided, even though he knew he had a half-hour walk into the area he wanted, he figured he'd wait till daylight and then go in. He would travel a logging road going in, and while he walked in there, after it got almost daylight, he started in there with his gun loaded and going in to where he's going to hunt. Anyway, he got into the area, and he knows it real well, and he already picked out some spots that he wanted to try out, and it's places where he'd seen that big buck that he was going after. So he reached one of these little hide areas that he liked to sit in, and it's an area where another logging road comes in, and there's kind of, which kind of makes like a T formation, and the deer come from the other two sides because behind him, 3/4 of a mile behind him is the road. So as he was sitting there, and he had noticed after it got daylight that he didn't see any fresh tracks or anything. So he thought maybe this year the deer hadn't moved in there quite yet. So he still sat up in his spot. And after about half an hour, he heard some deer running his way. At least he thought they were deer. And just as they got close to where he would be able to see them, where they would have to cross one of the two logging roads, they all of a sudden turned away from him, thinking, made him think maybe they smelt him or something. And once the deer turned, it sounded like they were running back down the road, down the area where he came from. And he didn't see any of them, but it made him wonder. He did hear one of the deer cry out like it was caught in a trap, like something had caught it, and it was crying out, bawling. He got up and was going to check it out, and heard some voices. He yelled out to let the other hunters know that he was close by, and the voices stopped, and everything was super quiet. This kind of bothered him a little bit, so he went back to get his gear and move on to a new area. After getting his seat and backpack, he headed towards the truck. He decided to get closer to the truck because there was, he heard people's voices in there. He couldn't distinguish what they were saying, but he heard, voices. And as he was headed back towards his truck, the deer stopped making noise. And so he started walking down the road. After walking about half a mile back towards his pickup, he decided to take a break and sit down and see if he could hear any deer. Now on his walk down, he never heard anything. Never heard squirrels or chipmunks or anything in the woods. Typical, wood noises. And then he kind of heard what sounded like heavy footsteps coming from his left as he was headed out towards his pickup down this log road. It come from his left, so it was across the road from him. And he heard what he thought was heavy footsteps, thinking maybe it could be a buck that he was looking at, or was going after. This kind of perked him up a little bit, and he sat still for a little while and kept listening to these footsteps. And after a little bit, these footsteps stopped. And when they stopped, he started scanning the woods real close, looking to see if he could see anything. And trying to see if he could see the patch of brown hair off the fur off the deer, or trying to catch a glimpse of this deer that he thought he was hearing. After a little bit of time looking around very intently for the deer, he decided he was going to take a couple of steps towards that side of the road from his from where he stopped to take his break. So he stood up and took a couple of steps, And let's see here. He said something large took off. He could only catch glimpses of it, but couldn't tell exactly what it was, but knew that it was running away on 2 feet. Now, he had heard stories throughout his life about Bigfoot and other things, and well, this kind of scared him a little bit. So he grabbed his stuff and grabbed his seat and his backpack and headed towards the truck. He wasn't running, but could feel something was following him. Just as after going a couple hundred yards or so, he turned to look back, and something hit him on his shoulder. Thinking someone hit him, he turned that way towards where it came from, and as he turned, something knocked him to the ground and sent his gun scattering on the ground, and he got back up pretty quick and grabbed his rifle and didn't see anything the way that it knocked him. He turned around and looked to see what had knocked him down and couldn't see anything. At this point, he turned and looked back down the road that he was on, the logging road, and saw 2 Bigfoot standing there, both of them over 8 foot tall, standing there looking at him from about 100 yards away. He couldn't see a whole lot of detail in the face, but he did his best to describe them as being close to somewhere between 8 and 9 foot tall, really wide shoulders, hair covered from the top of their head to their feet, big old barrel-chested, just huge creatures. And at this point, he decided the best thing to do was to get towards his truck. So he left from his truck, headed towards his truck, and every few steps he was turning to check, see if something was coming at him, chasing him down, and he could hear footsteps on both sides of him. And as he was hearing these footsteps, he decided that the best thing to do was get to his truck as fast as possible. And as soon as he started to run again, he got knocked over again. Now, these things were throwing rocks at him the whole time after he saw the 2 in the middle of the logging road. And as such, this scared him. He was frightened. So he done been knocked down once. And the second time another one knocked him down, it caught him and knocked him over. He luckily still had his backpack on his back. His seat was attached to his belt, and his rifle was slung across his right shoulder. So he jumps up and starts taking off, running towards the truck, and these things are following him all the way out the woods. When he gets about 100 yards from in a curve, there's about 100 yards left to his truck. He took off at a full sprint, and these things quit following him. So he goes home, tells his wife what happened, and his wife tells him, "Well, you need to go back out there. You need to call your dad and your brother and get them to come out and meet you out there." And that's exactly what she did. She called his dad and brother, and they met him back out there. So once he got out there, his brother pulled in first, and his brother got out with a rifle, and his dad pulled in too, and they went walking back in there. Well, they got probably 200 to 300 yards into that area again, just about where he'd been hit the second time. And his brother said, "Well, I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to go look for footprints. You're telling me that this is a Bigfoot. You saw him. I'm going to go look." And it's his younger brother. Younger brother's always got to prove something to big brother. I don't know why that is, but it just happens. Anyway, younger brother went into the woods, probably 50 to 100 yards is what he told me. him and his dad were standing there, and they heard all of a sudden started hearing their brother shoot. Hearing the younger brother shoot, he emptied his rifle and come screaming out of the woods. Get out of here, run, get out of here, them things will kill you. And he's running away from whatever he was shooting at. So I would say the younger brother probably walked in there and saw one stand there watching him walk around and look for him. And it scared him, and he shot at it. I don't know if he hit it or not, don't care. At this point, that would be, in my book, a sign of aggression. Knocking you over, throwing rocks at you is a sign of aggression. And I don't care if they kill him at that point. So anyway, they took off back towards the truck. Of course, Dad couldn't run as fast as them, but they just stayed right beside their dad. And they got back to the trucks. Dad jumped in his truck, and the younger brother jumped in his, and they took off, and he got in his truck, and he left the area, and he's never been back there since. And this happened this past year, earlier this year, in 2019. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like the story, I'm glad to be able to tell you and bring it to you. And I hope you like it, and I hope you enjoy it. And I know it's late to be a Christmas present, but this is y'all's Christmas present. I hope you enjoy it. And the old bear is done for today. We'll have another one for you here in a few more days. And I hope each and every one of you had a blessed Christmas and have a very happy New Year and a safe one. Just don't be out drinking and driving, guys, is all I can ask. I'd like to have all of you back after the first of the year. Want you all safe and sound. Thank you again, and we're done.